Welcome to the 4MileCircus, the official podcast of 4MileCircus, which is a media production and social media services company based in Brooklyn. Check us out at 4MileCircus.com. That's the number 4, followed by the word Mile Circus. My name is Sean Mannion. I'm a writer-director in Brooklyn.
And I'm Nicole. I'm the other half of 4MileCircus and a writer, director, producer based in Brooklyn. On this podcast, we will talk to independent artists and media makers about their relationships with social media. If you like what you hear, please subscribe on iTunes or your platform of choice and give us a 5-star review. It really helps spread the word about the show.
We're going to be live streaming this and future interviews on Facebook as we conduct them. So like 4MileCircus on Facebook to be notified of future live streams so you can see all our mistakes and comment with questions for the guest. Some questions may even make it into the show.
On today's episode, we will be having part 2 of our 2-part conversation with Eli Oberman and Louisa Solomon of Brooklyn-based independent rock band The Shondes. On today's episode, we will be talking to them largely about crowdfunding. So before we have part 2 of our conversation with Louisa and Eli talking about crowdfunding for their band, The Shondes, I think Sean Mannion has a tip of the episode for us. Do you have a tip, Sean?
I do. We're going to talk about consistency.
Okay.
Which
so important.
It's super important.
So hard
regularity,
on
consistency.
Platforms you don't like.
Yes. Which, can, depending on your mood, can be all of them sometimes. But the premise here is basically that creating or releasing or promoting content on a regular, reliable basis is a key component to audience building and audience sort of relationships. Like, people expect things on a regular basis. TV shows come out, once a week. New movies are on Fridays and DVDs come out on Tuesdays and stuff like that. And so whatever it is that you are trying to promote and trying to get people interested in about what you're doing, giving them something that they know, on Tuesday they're going to share a tip, or on Thursday they always share like a baby photo or something like that, like they participate in Throwback Thursday. It's useful for sort of giving people something to rely on, to know that's coming. Even if they don't recognize it to begin with, over time they're going to start seeing it. And you want to create that sense of something that people can look forward to, even if when you start nobody notices what you're doing. This not only makes it easier for fans, it makes it easier for yourself, because you have a life probably, and you have things to do, and just knowing that, okay, on Tuesdays, this is what I'm doing. I'm releasing an article every Tuesday about whatever it is. I'm going to post a photo of this person that, this thing that I'm into every Wednesday. It doesn't matter. If everything else is going whatever in your life, you at least know, like, okay, if I do that, I'm still covered. If I don't do anything else this week, if I do that, I'm covered. And it just makes it easier when your life is doing other things that aren't convenient for you to promote your work on social media, which is just the reality of living in the world. And on top of that, you should experiment with it. That's one of the things that Nicole and I always kind of hit on, is that if you do it, just because you're doing it doesn't mean that if it's not working that you should keep doing it. Like, you should try multiple things. Try to do things on several days to start and see what people are actually responding to. If people are actually responding to your Throwback Thursdays but don't give a shit about your tips or something like that on Tuesday, just do Throwback Thursday. Just post those baby pictures.
I just tell them, fuck you. Our tips are great.
Fuck you Friday.
Oh, that sounds like a thing we should do. That sounds very on that sounds very on brand for us, Nicole. We should really.
Well, you could actually say fuck you to a different person or entity every Friday.
I'm thinking.
I mean,
that should be a hashtag. Maybe it is, but
it
it's
probably
actually
funny.
funny.
It is now, if it wasn't already.
All right, hashtag fuck you Friday.
It can just be like,
like
Facebook.
that.
Don't flip
Fuck
them
you, Friday.
off.
I'm not flipping. I'm not flipping you guys off. These are for all the people in my head.
Facebook.
Yeah, this is for Mark Zuckerberg.
Well, so we just created a new hashtag. So everybody use "Fuck You Friday." Hashtag "Fuck You Friday."
It's already trending.
Donald Trump has already made a response tweet.
I have the new Google Glass that's invisible.
I'm jealous.
And I saw that it's trending.
Yeah, Invisiglass.
Invisible.
Invisalign is braces.
I know.
And they exist already.
I was thinking of transition.
Your new iPhone Invisalign.
Anyway.
Moving on.
So today we're going to talk to the Shondes about crowdfunding. Their new album drops on September
16th.
16th.
I thought you were going to say it. Sorry.
I blanked for a moment. And
Didn't
I was
mean
like,
to leave you
17th,
hanging.
16th. You left me hanging because everyone's eating ice cream instead of promoting their band and album. Anyway, now that we've all gotten a priorities check. Oh my God, it's so hot in here. I'm so loopy. So, Brighton,
She's a really good host. She's just having a rough day.
Anyway,
I'm not editing any of that out.
So, I lost my train of thought.
I see that.
Crowdfunding.
I'm wondering what's happening.
Let's talk about crowdfunding. So Eli and Louisa, you've done a few different crowdfunding campaigns. Can you walk us through how many crowdfunding campaigns you've done, what they were for, what platform they were on, roughly what time in your band's 10-year history? You guys formed in 2006. It's now 2016. At what points did you do crowdfunding campaigns? Tell us about those.
So I just want to let everyone know that it is now 2016. Nicole told me. We've only done 2 crowdfunding campaigns in the band's lifetime.
Both were Kickstarter.
Both were via Kickstarter. The first one, which is the one that we have most often talked about in interviews and stuff, because I think it was a little bit of a unusual and interesting circumstance, was when our van was stolen, which is a thing that often happens, sadly, to bands, especially if you live in New York. Pretty high auto theft rate. So the van was stolen, and I believe it was 17 days. Is that right? 17 days, I think, before South by Southwest, and we were supposed to go and play a bunch of shows. So we decided on a whim to give it a shot and see if we could do crowdfunding to pay for a new van, and we succeeded and exceeded our fundraising goal, I believe. What was the goal? 11?
The goal was
$10,000.
$11 and some.
And we did use it entirely to buy our new van that we still have and is in great working order at the moment, knock wood, because we're heading out on tour. And it was a really fun Kickstarter campaign because I think people were able to feel and be in touch with the urgency of the situation and the sort of countdown to South by Southwest, and the very tangible nature of the goal was, I think, a little more participatory and fun for people than some crowdfunding can be. And we tried to make incentives that related to that tangible outcome. And most notably, the one that people talk about is when we were brainstorming incentives, somehow we got on this joking, tangent about the way that synagogues will have every single part of the synagogue named after a donor. And so there is a tiny, brass plaque on every single thing in the synagogue, down to, some piece of crap in the bathroom is sponsored by, Moish Blumenfield or whatever. And so we thought it was really funny to imagine if our fans got to have tiny plaques on various parts of the van, from, the tailpipe to the gas cap to the hubcaps, whatever, all of the parts. And of course, the tiny plaques were even shittier than the tiny plaques at the synagogue.
By a lot.
They're, in fact, strips of tape from a label maker. Yeah. But most of them are still there. And that was 2011,
yeah,
I believe. And so since it's 2016, as Nicole told you, that's 5 years ago.
Most of them are still there, and it's still very fun when we go different places and people want to see their part, and it's still there, and you can be like, yes, here is the Nurse Nathan steering wheel, for example.
Shout out to Nathan.
Definitely not watching.
Yeah, and I will also say selfishly that I love that incentive because I like getting in the van and seeing all these people and remembering that that people care about what we do at all, and B, that feeling so grateful that all these people were so generous and getting to remember that we are doing what we're doing because of them, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and what kind of reaction did you get to that incentive from the fans? Because it seemed like people were really into it and even came to be into like which part of the van. Like, I want the glove compartment.
There were a lot of requests about it.
Yeah.
We sent everyone photographs. I think there were maybe 2 incentive levels, one where they got a digital photograph and one maybe where we mailed it to them.
Yeah.
With something else. And it was also very funny to take photographs of a piece of the van with a label maker sticker on it that names the person's, donation. The whole thing had a sense of humor about it that I think people really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And those people have a kind of odd fame now. I've, for instance, used the Shondes van in conjunction with various film projects.
Fame.
And hey, it is a kind of fame. Do you want this?
Sure.
And people ride around in the van and they're like, what's this? And they're interested. Sean, for example, was in the Shondes van at one point and took note of the names everywhere and was curious as to the story behind that.
Yeah, everybody always asks about it.
And I was just like, why are all these names on here? Are these the names of the people they ran down?
Definitely not.
And Nicole just stared at me for a second.
Yeah.
And this, no, not at all.
Not really.
Not at all, no.
Really, that's not the secret
No.
here at all. But
It's not that kind of a van.
It's not that kind of
It's
a
not
van?
a murder van. It's not a hit and run van.
Well,
the best ones.
you weren't in the car with us when I was using it.
Thank God.
Anyway.
So the other campaign was when we did our European tour in 2012, which it was an amazing experience for us. And although in many, many ways, touring Europe, at least some parts of Europe, is much more artist-friendly than the United States, what we were fundraising for was the upfront costs to get there, which were pretty prohibitive for us in terms of airfare and van and gear rental once we were over there and stuff like that, all of which had to be paid for upfront. So it was really, I think, also had some of the same immediacy as the van, although not exactly the same. There wasn't, the 17 days till South by, but it was, the European fans that we had, it was, this would be a way for them to see us live for the first time. And so it was, it was definitely, that was an incentive for our European fans. And then for people who just generally supported us and backed us in the US, it's well known that is a really great place for touring bands, and people, I think, wanted us to be able to have that experience. And so, yeah.
I think it also had in common with the other campaign that the tangibility of the goal, again, was really clear. It was like, we are fundraising so that we can literally go, so that we can get plane tickets that will actually get us there. And if we can't succeed at this fundraising effort, then we won't be able to get there. We have all these great shows lined up. We've done everything we can do, but we have this hurdle to cross, and we can do that with your help. And that's all real, and people are responsive, I think, to asks that feel real. And that's not to say that it's not real when the goal is more abstract, but I think it's easier to connect with when it's that concrete.
It makes it personal.
Makes it personal, and I think, but also it translates more clearly. The outcome is more clearly connected to the donation. A lot of people enjoy donating to basically startups or people who've invented products and want to get them made or whatever it is. But those kind of projects, they have a less immediate outcome because it's going to be a longer process. It's going to be, you're sort of an early investor in someone's company or whatever, their project, that it may take years to actually launch. Whereas we're saying, if you can help us get to $6,000, then we can cross the ocean in a month from now.
And even, even for recording an album, that can take, which people do, that can take a really long time. So, and we've never done a crowdfunding for a record we've made.
We've always shied away from it, actually, which is not in any judgment of people who've done it, but it can be, I think one of the tricky things about crowdfunding is understanding what kind of crowdfunding, what level, and for what projects is appropriate based on where you are in your career or with your project. And that, understandably, there may be more interest in donating to a project that is newer and has less apparent support. Even if we are in as much financial need to accomplish something, I always feel uncomfortable when the idea has come up, because I think rightly or wrongly, I think our fans see that we are established in a certain way, and it may be hard for them to understand why we would want to create a $30,000 Kickstarter to make something happen. It's one of the tricky things about crowdfunding.
Do you think,
to be very honest?
Yeah, no, that's good. Do you think that there's something to be said for doing a small crowdfunding campaign for $6,000 to get to Europe for a band at the phase you were at? That was what, like 5 years ago?
No, it was
4.
2012, and it is now 2016.
Is it though?
It is. So it was 4 years ago.
Okay, so it was 4 years ago. And at that point in time, do you think that was an easier ask than pre-buy an album, basically?
I mean, I think that structuring it as pre-buying is really different. Okay. And I would fundraise through pre-sales, but we don't self-release our album, so that's not really how that works.
Yeah.
But if we were, I would definitely do that. If it was strictly pre-order, gotcha, and we put the upfront money toward the album, yeah. But other kinds of just like naming a figure and saying this is what we need for album production, I feel uncomfortable about it, partly because I think a lot of people don't actually have a realistic sense of the expenses associated with doing what we do. And I'm always happy to talk to people about it, but it feels like a sharp learning curve when you're making an ask that big of people. And so for that reason, it has always felt dauntingly complicated to me to consider how to make that work. That's for us. I don't think that's true for everyone. I think that when you're less established as an artist, it looks fine and on the surface makes a lot of sense that you would be asking money to get your first record made or whatever it is. Although you might still get that pushback, can't anyone make an album in their garage or whatever, which is untrue.
Right, which is why I brought that up before and why it has
place.
felt difficult to make that kind of ask of people.
That's part of why, actually. We used to complain about that a lot. Around the time that Foo Fighters record came out and everyone was saying, Dave Grohl made this album in his garage, it was suddenly like, why can't you make that album in your garage? And it's like,
you don't have Dave Grohl's garage,
Dave Grohl.
For one?
I don't have a garage at all.
His is pretty nice, I'm guessing.
He's a millionaire. So, I don't actually know that he's a millionaire. I'm sorry. That was an
probably
assumption,
is.
but I'm going to really assume.
I think.
Probably do it fine.
It's a safe.
Hope that he's sewed that up okay for himself. But anyway, the point is, it's depending on what kind of production you're doing and what your skill set is and what gear you have access to and what people you have access to and their skill sets, it is so varied what the capacity for self-production is. And certainly for what we do, we need to be partnering with people who have access to a lot of gear and high quality studio equipment and skill sets.
Yeah, and this is all very analogous to conversations we've had with filmmakers, low-level filmmakers, about crowdfunding for films. I mean, it's the same thing of like, Sean and I were actually just having conversations. Ooh, it's a terrible noise.
Can we hold for
There's a
just
truck going by in Brighton Beach.
We good?
Nasty truck, yeah.
Oh, it's back.
That's squeezing on the brakes.
Yeah, that's bad.
That could come back at any time. I'm just going to warn you.
Yeah.
So Sean and I were talking about crowdfunding because I'm writing a feature that I may crowdfund and myself and make my...
It's just, I'll find the frequency and
Okay.
make it go away.
Cool. Please. Thank you.
High techie queuing. Love it.
And specifically, I would have an advantage because it's my first feature. That's an appropriate crowdfunding event. If it was my second feature, it would
feel uncomfortable.
It's not even that it would feel uncomfortable so much as people would be like, well, why are you asking for my money again?
But that's very analogous. And in the sense that, like, with your first feature, you can say, look at what I did with my first short, you know, and it was so successful within the frame of its goals and all of that stuff. And I did all of that with much less money and blah, blah, blah. Now I'm trying to take the next step in my career, and I can't do that without your help. And that's totally real. But for some reason, people get that in a way that when it comes to the next one, it's not, the narrative is not as legible or something, but it's no less true.
And it's also analogous in the sense of understanding, like, gear and technical stuff, like, that people don't understand. You know, you have a video camera, and you have a computer and you can edit. Why do you need any money to make your film?
It's so frustrating. I mean, and because, like, if you look at any of us, we do so much work on no budget with what we have, with the skills we have, and calling in the favors we haven't, you know, we do so much work that way. But if the of your DIY is a certain kind of project, that's not feasible for it.
Right, absolutely. And to your point about transparency and everything, if I did this, I would probably release a rough budget, like make that public, be like, this is exactly where all of the money that I'm asking for is going.
And this is what things cost.
Yeah, and it would involve things like, I want to pay people, because there's also this idea of like, well, people, if you love it, do it for free. And it's like, no, I literally can't afford to do it for free. Because,
we've talked about this a lot, and I'm not going to name any names, but there's so much public conversation around this stuff right now. And you sometimes hear people who are very privileged talking about with a glowing sense of pride about the favors they called in that enabled them to do something on a low budget. And I just ask everyone to remember that the greater your own financial privilege, often the easier it is for you and your friends with similar privilege to do free labor.
Yeah.
It is often people who most need money who cannot just be doing free labor all the time.
And social capital also, you know, about who you know.
Do we have a visitor? Miller, do you have any idea what that could be? Oh, it is Fresh Direct. Okay. Fresh Direct is here. I'm sorry, you don't have to. That's fine. It's like I had to order some stuff for tour. Where were we?
I don't know what that was.
We were in the middle of the Europe crowdfunding.
Europe, but then we kind of went to
the way
we were talking about in general
to
crowdfunding and the way people respond to it.
and things in film.
And honestly, that's why we haven't done another one since then. It's not because we made it and then we didn't need it anymore. It's because it no longer felt like something where we could present it in a way that would make sense and be appealing enough for it to be successful. And it may not be true. I mean, I think there's a chance that if we did it, we would still be meeting whatever goal we set. But it makes me uncomfortable. And I think there is a truth to the thing that we're talking about how it appears to people. And when I say it makes me uncomfortable, that's why. I perceive the possibility of people thinking that band is already too successful to be doing this. And I know lots of people have written about this subject and more intelligently than I will speak today, but it is a bind.
And also people who aren't in arts-related industries tend to have a misconception about just how fucking bad it is right now to be in basically any arts-related industry just trying to make a living or break even or whatever it is. If you do not have those kinds of financial resources of like, I have a trust fund, or I switched to the arts after having a career in finance and realizing my heart wasn't in it and I have this massive amount of resources I've amassed.
There's this new platform, I won't tangent about it, but Steve Fisk, producer, told me about it like last week, and he was like asking if we were interested. That is launching in Seattle. That's a Spotify alternative for indie music, in short.
Okay.
I guess I'm promoting it now, although I'm about to say something that annoyed me about it. But
you're just sharing information.
It's called Guild, and it's kind of interesting in that it seeks to have a better profit-sharing model that's more artist-friendly and to do more of putting indie artists in front of listeners instead of asking the listener to search for what they're looking for and all that stuff. So it's interesting, and it hasn't launched yet. And I respect the person who told me about it. So I was thinking about it, and I was reading some press about it. It sounds great, and I'm on board. But there was this one comment that was made in an interview I was reading about it, where it was said, like, it's so hard for musicians to be, receiving royalties, making money, blah, 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 without working day jobs or dipping into their trust funds. And it was said just in passing.
As though
that's like a
thing.
pretty common and normal experience. And in a certain way, it made me think, well, a lot of the people that they may be speaking to about this in the research going into it may actually be in that situation. That a lot of people who are putting themselves out there as artists do have that kind of financial backup, and they're looking for artist help so that they don't have to dip into their resources. And it really troubled me. Even the notion of without, the goal of not having a day job. Not having a day job is inconceivable to me, doing what we do. And I dream of it. I would love, as much as I do love my day job and it's wonderful, I would love to be full-time making music. But that is barely even a goal on my radar anymore.
The audience at home, this book I have in my bag.
Nicole
have day jobs.
is sharing a book called Sara
Benincasa, which is just where she talks in it like very candidly about time she's been doing her art full time. Like that has been what her job is and bringing in money, and then it's not, and how it's very up and down for most people. It's not like you reach a point where you've made it, and like we maybe used to fantasize about when we were kids, or at least I did. Yeah. It's like a constant back and forth, and just trying to get rid of the idea that like if you're a real artist, it's because you've attained this imaginary level of success that just doesn't exist anymore.
Well, I mean, and like she's famous to some extent. Yeah. She has a Jim Gaffigan quote on the back of her book. It's a HarperCollins book. So she's obviously, in addition to being a comedian, a published author with a major publishing house.
And this is like her third book or something.
Yeah. Right. I mean, the fantasies that people have about what it is to be an established creative professional are very unrealistic for the most part. And I think there's this parallel, or there's this related phenomenon of how even fans or audiences respond to us and what their expectations are about our lives. People are often surprised that I have a day job. And that's with our level of success. There are bands much more profitable than we are, and the members still have day jobs too. So it's weird to me, that amount of disconnect. And yet there's all this cultural conversation about the need for artists to be able to crowdfund, but I feel like we're building these moral norms about how artists are supposed to behave and what they're supposed to be able to do with and without crowdfunding. And it feels to me that it is, in some way, I'm not smart enough to put my finger on, totally replicating this sort of inequality, capitalist inequality.
I think it is.
And
unsurprisingly.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because people are always trying to say like, well, there's the path to it. Like there's a path to becoming a CPA or something like that. There's a path to being a famous rock star.
Rock star, yeah.
Exactly. It's like or to being a film director where that's your job. It's like no, there's not just go to school, do this job, then you're there. There's 1,000 different ways to get there, and there's a million, and
a good chance that none of them will work.
Exactly. In fact, a better chance than not that you won't get where you want to be with it. Mm-hmm. And so in the end, in a lot of ways, it just becomes about how much longer you can fight it out, basically, over anything else.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, I think it makes a lot more sense to talk about and think about things in terms of sustainability than success. Like,
right, and life sustainability.
Exactly. Yeah. Can you be putting out the stuff that you feel compelled to put out while, having a life that contains whatever else it is that you want and need in terms of like paying your bills and maybe having family, friends, etc. Fun sometimes, sleep.
Right.
I don't know what any of those words you said are.
Well, because a corresponding problematic narrative is the like capitalist work ethic as it plays out among artists. And as someone who basically does work a lot of the time from first thing in the morning through the end of my day job, and then for another long time on music and band work after that. And I sort of fit that model.
Yeah.
I'm, resentful of it. I don't actually find it to be on a morally higher ground than something else. But I think we hold each other to these unfair standards that are, again, born out of real old capitalist myths.
And are self-destructive. You
Yeah.
know? That's not... Yeah.
Right, and that
I
increased
also
burnout.
like, I'm interested in and critical of like the more like patron, platforms now.
Patreon?
Yeah,
That would be an example.
yeah.
Patron.
But the
style.
idea of being a patron of the arts and how, back in medieval days, you would just have a rich patron and they would do it. And now it's 2016, as we know from Nicole. And it's 2016. And so instead of having one patron, you have many, many patrons. But they're all, as far as I know, they're all still based on putting out material. In terms of, like every time you post a new article or a new photograph or a new
music video.
song or whatever, then the person pays how much they've elected to put in, $5 or, $1 or whatever. You look like you need to...
Yeah, but finish your thought and then I'll say anything about
Which again, just is, it's still tied to production in a certain way, and like
That's true.
and I don't have anything against producing things. Artists want to produce their work, but first of all, it's really different for different artists, for different art forms. It can take,
It's product oriented.
It's product-
which doesn't apply equally to everybody.
right, and the amount of money that it takes to make that product is also different. I'm not in any way trying to say that writers have it easy. I would never say such a thing, but it doesn't. You can produce a piece of writing.
Writers have it easy.
You can
I hate writers.
you can produce a piece of writing, quote unquote, for free, not including your time. Right. Whereas the amount of money and that it would take us to release a song would be a lot. And so they're also, and it's not like just the reason I thought of it was because we were talking about, the frames within capitalism, but also because you mentioned sustainability, Nicole, and about thinking about like sustainability as opposed to success or whatever. And it's like, what would actually be sustainable for me is if we is if instead of having it be tied to something that we produced was just to help us keep going. Like we have bills every month, and if we can't produce a song of
To be clear, he means we the band, separate from we as
Sorry,
individuals
yeah, I'm
who
thinking
also,
about,
of course, have bills.
Right, yeah, I'm thinking about, for example, our van insurance bill, which is very high and has to be, because we live in New York and it's a band, and it's a van, and has to be paid every month whether or not we wrote a song or went on tour or did anything else. And the way that burdens our lives as individuals, and of course that's just one small example, it's like what would be sustainable to me is if I knew that van insurance was covered every month by our patrons.
I think Nicole's about to tell us a way that maybe we could do that through Patreon.
Yeah, well, Patreon, you can set up a couple different ways. I was just talking about exactly this with Sean Sotero, who has a Patreon for the Cipher, his podcast. And it's basically your, and Jean Grey does this, I think, the same way. I think they're on the same plan, where rather than it being tied to project, it's just month to month. It's like you pledge a certain amount each month, and you ideally are probably pretty transparent with the people giving you money about, like, this is what I'm working on, this is what's coming up.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, it's not they pay per project. It's not like the Amanda Palmer model.
What
She
do
does
you-
per project.
What do they get in exchange for it? Nothing?
Access to, like, content you can't get otherwise. And
So you put
can set that
exclusive
up differently.
content on Patreon.
Yes.
But you can say, we could say, give us $350 a month for our insurance or whatever. And people could all pitch in whatever they want toward that. And regardless of whether or not we meet a goal, we get it.
Yes, I mean,
and we just put exclusive content, but it doesn't need to be pegged to it could be just once a month.
It's
you
whatever
give a
you
donation
want.
and we give you our Patreon content.
Yeah, like I think
See, that we could do, because I have to say, depending on if it's not product oriented, if we're not saying we will produce a new album every month for you, we could say we will give you an exclusive recording or video of a new song or something. It just wouldn't be a professionally recorded song, but I'd happily make a video in our rehearsal space of us playing a cover or the process of working on a new song or whatever it is.
I mean, that all can work. And we can have a longer conversations about this off the show, but I actually think this is probably of interest to people listening as well.
Yeah, no, I think it is.
And actually having the conversation about our questions about how to use it.
Yeah,
and
because I've
responding.
totally, I was like all psyched when I first heard about it, and I researched it, and I didn't see any option
remember
like
asking
that.
you to.
Well,
Yeah.
like as hopeful, like with Jean, for example, she does so many different kinds of things. She makes music, she does writing, she does performance stuff. She just is always, doing different kinds of things in different areas, different genres, etc. And so she's kind of like, okay, you're a fan of me. You're a fan of the stuff I do. Help make it sustainable for me to just keep doing stuff and like put some trust in me that, you're going to like the stuff. You don't get to be like, I don't want to fund your like dance thing that you're working on, but I do want to fund your rap album.
What
it's
you
like,
can
fund me.
offer people to do that. And it's tricky.
It is. She's a good person to look at because you can do layers of like, if you give $1 a month, you get this. If you do $5 a month, you get like a higher level. There's different levels and you get more stuff kind of the more you give. And if you give it a certain level, you'll get like when she puts out an EP, you'll get that for free. You don't have to go buy that separately. You get it as a patron, but you don't have to do that. There's a large amount of flexibility. With the Cipher, they give basically just like outtakes that don't make it onto the show, but are like interesting sections of an interview. And so if you're like a serious hip hop head and you like want that kind of thing, that's most of what they've been giving. But it's very open and flexible, and it is, whereas other artists they do it by project. And Eli, Sean Sotero, and I were having a conversation about exactly that thing about like, well, it could be like a poem, no offense to poets, and not that work doesn't go into poetry, or it could be like an EP with a whole string section. There's a poet in the house. We don't want to disturb the poet in the house.
Don't anger the poet.
You wouldn't like him when he's angry. That was weird.
That was weird. You would definitely like him when he's angry.
It's true. But yeah, it's not that thing of like, maybe you recorded an album with like a whole orchestra and, your $5 a month goes to that. Or maybe it was, I wrote a line and put it up on the internet and showed it to you. That was a beautiful phrase. And that was a project.
I can't remember how long Patreon had been around. I think it was still pretty new, but I supported a friend of mine who's a painter and a writer, Caitlin Foisey, and I think I gave like $5 a month maybe or something like that.
For
and
how long? What are the terms?
Indefinitely.
It was indefinitely. She actually shut hers down because she got so busy with certain things. This is what I recall. She couldn't like keep up with what she wanted to do with Patreon and felt like she wanted to like put up, I think, regular artwork there. This happened like a year and a half or 2 years ago maybe, so I'm having a hard time remembering exactly what happened. But she would also post writing, and you'd have like access to like an exclusive blog with stuff where she'd update, and she'd share like, if I recall, she shared like process work, which was interesting to me, and as well as showing the final product and stuff like that. So I mean, it's slightly different in that well, not really that different, I guess, but it's not an album, but it's art.
I mean, we could do like a behind the scenes video once a month. That was really interesting to anyone who wanted that level of detail, and that maybe we wouldn't, similarly to the scarcity comment about Instagram stories, like we could post content that we don't want featured for the general public, but that for people who are that invested, we're happy to share it with them.
And we could write
about our process.
We could write about stuff.
Yeah, we could write about process, but I mean, what I was thinking is like, that we could literally video in the practice space while we're working on new material or whatever here while we're working on new material, and then give the footage to someone who might put it together for us into like a little 10-minute mini doc BTS thing.
Yeah, I think you could do that, and Patreon at least used to be very accessible in terms of people who were interested in starting there. Like, you could get somebody on the phone and they'll talk you through stuff. So that might be something you guys would want to look into. Circling back to your Kickstarter for a minute, I'm curious about, you did a Kickstarter, you raised $6,000 to go to Europe, finally. And people, including people in the United States, who weren't going to get to see any of those shows. So that wasn't an incentive. The incentive was like an investment in you guys as a band. They care about you. But I'm assuming you also gave them some sort of more tangible incentives that you sent them. And I'm wondering what they were.
You know, I'm just going to say a thing that he can cut out if you want me to have him cut it out. But that, well, no, I was just going to say, similar to when we were in the previous episode discussing our social media successes and foibles, that I think a lesson that I learned from doing Kickstarter is that you need to make sure that you have your business in order inside your entity. And we really do now run a tight ship in the band, business-wise. But at the time, we didn't. And, you know, I'm not talking about any individual mistakes that were made, but things were not being run in a way that allowed us to do it right. And it means that some people didn't get their stuff. And I know that that happens all the time, and I've read many stories about it. It's not like we're the first, but that's really out of keeping with how we have tended to run the band and how we try to handle fan engagement, where we're very hands-on and do a lot of like sending special things to people, and we try to anyway. And that's actually something I think of that as a huge failure in our history, even though it was
really
success.
bad.
And I don't know well enough what didn't and did get sent to fix it. And I think about it periodically and feel guilty about it to this day. Like, geez, there's probably people that didn't get their fill in the blank incentive, but I don't know. I wasn't in charge of that. I don't know who they are. I don't know what needs to be done. Maybe it was done. And that feeling of not knowing is really unsettling to me, because I think you should take that stuff seriously. And with the van one, I'm pretty sure we did everything right. In that Europe one, I know things got messed up, and I feel so bad about it. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you're doing that, think through your incentives carefully and think through how you're managing the fulfillment as carefully as you think through any major decision that you make in life. Because if you don't follow through, that's probably part of why I don't want to do another campaign now. Anyway, even though I know that we run a very tight ship now, they don't necessarily know that. I don't want people to feel like, I don't want to give to them, I never got my postcard or whatever.
I mean,
that's real.
I will, I will say,
accountability is very important.
Accountability is really important, and it does feel really bad. And I know that we, I think that people underestimate. I've heard other people who have run successful Kickstarter campaigns talk about underestimating the amount of time, money, and labor that it takes to make and fulfill the incentives that you put out. And so I think that needs to be like really seriously considered. And, that was, without going into the details about the specific pieces that we didn't fulfill in that.
I think we fulfilled most of it, to be clear, but I think there were aspects that fell through or were so late or whatever.
It was an organizational issue, basically a record-keeping breakdown.
It was a
role, responsibility, lack of clarity.
I will say that it was a very difficult time for us in the band and personally. Yeah. And so, we
were like in the middle of a lineup change.
We were in the middle.
2 people left.
We were in the middle of a double lineup change. It was the first. It was the second tour we did after I had cancer. It was the
soon after
the first tour. So people know, your first tour had to be canceled, right? Because
we had a whole European tour that we canceled because I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And anyway, there was I'm not like.
You're not making excuses.
I'm not making excuses.
Okay.
Life happens, and one of anyone who's been through anything really difficult, which is everyone, knows that when stuff like that is happening, you drop the ball on things. And but it's really hard, because it's unlike if you drop the ball with with a work project or a friend that you can go to and take accountability and apologize for. With your fans, it's not really like that. I mean, we could issue a grand sweeping statement, but like Louisa said, like we don't know who the people are that didn't get what they were supposed to.
You know, we could be like, this is Shondes 6.0, as mentioned earlier, and if you possibly were expecting some sort of a Kickstarter incentive that you never got, tell us what you want, because me and Eli, we'll take care of it. No problem.
Yeah,
we run a tight ship now.
Any of you listening, if the Shondes owe you a Kickstarter reward, you can
please email us.
You'll go on a spreadsheet that is currently maintained
by us.
You can hit them up or me and Sean, and we'll pass on the message. And
Don't hit me up about it.
Unless in more direct response that is less sad and upsetting to your question, I think you know, people would get either physical, like one of the incentives were like either physical or digital postcards from Europe, and so
which I think we did succeed.
Yes,
in doing.
I know we succeeded in that, and so you know, and people could even pick which city they wanted us to be in. So it would be like, okay, send me a postcard from Paris, send me a postcard from Prague, send me a postcard from Warsaw, and so
I will say, with just as a sidebar on lack of fulfillment, like if you screw up and you don't fulfill. There's a big difference between not fulfilling a postcard for someone who obviously donated because they support you immensely, because all they're getting is a postcard that shows that they support you, versus if it was like effectively a pre-order of an album and it wasn't fulfilled. Yes. Because that model is more like they're buying a product from you ahead of time. If you didn't fulfill that, I think the wrongness would be different and they would be angrier. Like, I don't think we got a single complaint about this. So, you know, I don't think people are at home like waiting for their product, for their postcard to arrive, you know. 4 years later. Hopefully not. But if you are, we will write you a postcard. Sorry, go on.
No, that was pretty much it.
Well, and there's also a phenomenon that happens sometimes. I mean, I've noticed it because I've either run or I've done other people's or done my own, where people sometimes, and it happens to me as well, forget that what their incentive is supposed to be. They just got really excited about your thing, whatever it was, and they're just like, oh yeah, or
they don't care.
On things that I've run, I've asked people like 3 times, hey, can you send me your address so we can send you this thing?
Right.
We got that.
And they'll be like,
Yeah.
and nothing. I'm
Never
like,
hear back from you. Yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah, you did your due diligence.
Exactly.
Right, and I think that's fair. A lot of people donate to those things and don't care at all about the incentives, and that's fine.
And I mean, that's usually me personally. I'm usually like donating to somebody I know. I'm like, I want you to make your thing. I'll probably watch it at some point.
Right.
Right.
Maybe.
I don't need you to send me
Fair.
a T-shirt.
No, I really don't want you to send me a T-shirt.
no, I
Do
need
you want to see
people.
our new T-shirts?
I saw them earlier.
Oh, you were here. Oh
We
my
can
God.
show the live stream though; they look very nice. I do want my T-shirts from crowdfunding campaigns, though. I have to say, if it's a T-shirt specifically,
That's a lot more product-like than a postcard.
Thing. Yeah.
A digital postcard.
I usually will give people like $5 for a crowdfunding campaign, but if they've got a sweet T-shirt, like I will go up. I have several times gone up higher than I intended to because I'm like, I want that T-shirt. That's me. So if you want to crowdfund to me, have T-shirts and have them be sweet. And
It's really funny. Like, we could do a Kickstarter that was effectively all pre-orders of merch in order to pay for the merch up front.
you could.
But I would feel embarrassed. Like, I would just feel uncomfortable. Like, hey, help us make our merch. Pay for it before it's here, and then you'll get it. I would feel embarrassed. I don't know why.
Well, I mean, I think it relates to some of the things we were talking about earlier about like these ideas of like when
Like, what's wrong with you if you can't pay for your merch up front?
Yeah.
Aren't you a successful band?
Yeah, and it's like, no, breaking even is a successful band. That
Didn't
doesn't mean
Against
you
Me
have
buy your
capital,
merch?
You know? Like, yeah, but no, people don't understand. They think, oh, you toured with Against Me, so you must have money because I've heard of that band. Or if you look on Twitter and you follow any independent musicians, you'll see all the time people like trying to pick fights with them. They're like, but you had a video on MTV once, so you must be rich. And it's like, no, that's not how any of this works at all. You know, if I've heard of you, if you've been on TV, you must live in a mansion.
Right. If you've been in Rolling Stone, you definitely don't need my money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in Rolling Stone, you're like Beyonce.
Yeah, everybody in Rolling Stone.
You'd be surprised. I mean, you wouldn't, I guess.
I'm not
but
surprised.
People are surprised, but that's...
I know.
That's real. People, so many people were supportive of the Shondes when we were new. because they supported the conceit or the idea or liked the music, for whatever reason, but felt that their support became less meaningful as we became more successful in terms of press recognition and so forth. And in fact, it's almost like it's more meaningful now. I mean, maybe that's a silly way to put it, but when I think about like playing a record release show in Brooklyn, I think about early events that we would throw and getting like 400 people to just be there, and it felt like they were rallying to support us in a way that now I think it's like, oh, take it or leave it. If I'm free that night, I'd love to see the Shondes, but they don't need me there, and it's like, we totally need you there.
Yeah. Go ahead. And I think also, again, getting back to like, the perceptions and pressures of capitalism, it's like that horrible thing of if you charge more for something, people think it's more valuable. Yep. And so I think like in terms of our
or conversely, they think badly of you for doing so, but that's a different thing.
That's a different thing, but that's a thing.
But sorry, go on about the
like
first one.
How dare you have a price point that's
right?
I personally think in my ignorant
that's true.
fantasy.
But I would say the same thing about the perception of our success, and so the perception of our success is actually valuable to us in a capitalist structure. To appear to be successful at whatever level we are is important, and it would be foolish of us. Yeah, it would be foolish of us to not understand that or accept that and make whatever decisions we want about it, but to be aware of that appearing to be successful is helpful to us. And so I think things like asking like crowdfunding for a run of t-shirts undermines that image. Yeah. And yet that image also causes people to not think that we need help. So it, or support or however, or money or for you. It's a difficulty.
Yeah, absolutely. We were just talking to comedy duo SJ and Ginny about when they were crowdfunding for their TV pilot Urban Teach Now, and how they got some big press around that, and how on the one hand that was really great, but on the other hand it actually undercut their crowdfunding campaign, because then people are like, oh, I saw this huge article about you. Okay. You don't need my $5.
So to me, what's really clear about this is, what do we mean when we say success? This is such a problematic term. Do you mean success in the sense that you have some recognition from the press or name recognition or whatever? And why do people assume that has anything to do with financial sustainability? They're not. They do not have a clear link to one another. I mean, I wouldn't say they have nothing to do with one another, but it's not the relationship that people are assuming that they have. We can be in all of these great magazines, and it has zero impact on our financial viability as a business.
But we all grew up watching narratives of show business honking.
Hi, Brighton Beach.
Of show business success, in which these things all go together, right?
Right, on this one trajectory that leads from A to B.
Up and then down.
See, the thing is, like Eli's talking about how the perception of our success is useful to us. I would say we are successful. That's not actually untrue. It's just not financially true.
Yeah. Well, you're more financially successful than some bands. You're not.
Of course.
You're managing to keep afloat through your combination of.
I'm also managing to keep afloat because I work a full-time job that I've been at for a long enough time to get multiple promotions, and that's how I am keeping afloat. It's not the band keeping me afloat, and the band doesn't keep itself afloat.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I meant the band is managing to stay afloat through these multiple sources of flotation.
And I'm just saying, like, even that is a yes and no. I think it's true that it's more. I think it is true that the Shondes generate more money at a merch table or a show or on album sales than some other bands, including us earlier in our career. But our expenses have also become greater as our success has been greater. You need to tour more, so like there's all kinds of things that come up. You need to pay people. You need to, I won't list all of the expenses, but just trust me, they go up. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is I do think we're successful, but in some ways when you talk about that, people assume financial success comes along with it. and then don't want to help you anymore.
Absolutely. And on that very real and kind of depressing note,
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Is it game time again?
It's going to be. But is there anything that you, other than the thing that I think is a very, very salient point about make sure you've got your business in order before you crowdfund, and also think through what your incentives are and how you're going to deliver them, and make sure you have a mechanism for doing that and tracking it. And I think I definitely relate to that. And lots of filmmakers I know people who did not fulfill their rewards because they didn't think through it first. And they're like, I don't know how I'm actually going to make these things happen, et cetera. So besides that, was there anything else that surprised you or lessons learned about crowdfunding that you think might be of use to other bands or other artists looking to fund some part of their project through those means? If the answer is no, that's fine too.
I mean, I don't know how useful this is. I will say that when we did the Kickstarter for the van, we talked a lot about how much to ask for. Debated heavily how much to ask for because of some of the issues that we were talking about before. If you ask for too much, it like can really put people off. And at the same time, what we ended up doing was asking for $10,000, which was an incredibly enormous amount of money that we that none of us could really conceive of having, and that different ones of us balked at to different extents about asking for. And I know I was the one who the most didn't feel like we could ask for that. And I will say that I'm glad that we did, and that Louisa and the rest of our band at the time pushed me towards that, and that I agreed to it, because it was actually the amount that we needed, and not a penny less. It was what we actually needed. And it's really hard to ask for money, and it's really hard to ask for a figure that sounds presumptuous or ungrateful, or I don't know, like any of the things we're worried about when we ask for help, financial or other kinds of help. But we could not have gotten a van for $5,000 that would do what we needed it to do. And so I think.
Well, can I just interject?
Yeah.
I think part of what is underlying that is, am I so loud that you have to adjust every time I go?
I just.
I can stay away.
Time for everybody. No,
This makes it look like he has a job.
Yeah, I'm actually not doing. We're not even.
Those knobs aren't even connected to anything. He's just.
Let me just tweak her EQ a little bit. I'm just gonna compress a little. No, what I was gonna say is that, again, like the assumption that we should be able to record in our garage with, cheaper gear. When I was younger, I would have thought, well, we can buy a shittier van. And a shitty van, didn't I just see one on the corner that's $1,000? Like, why did they ask for $10,000? What do they want? Some sort of a luxury Mercedes, Euro
stretch Hummer,
van? Like
those $10,000 stretch Mercedes Hummers.
Right. And of course that's not the case. The van we bought is basically the same van we'd had before.
2007 Ford Econoline 150.
It's a fine van.
Navy blue. But the point I was going to make is that by asking for $10,000, we still use that same van now.
Yep.
If we had asked for $3,000 and bought a clunker, it might still be running, but probably it would be...
Almost definitely not.
Almost definitely not. And that would mean we would have been in that situation all over again. So I think thinking about it in terms of career longevity is really key. Our van is one of our biggest assets. So,
and it's the assets of your broader community, because God knows I've used it enough times.
Right. We like to think everybody is using it. Let us know if you need to rent the van. That's another income source for us. Or borrow.
I think also, like, not to be too cheesy, but honestly, the most surprising thing about it that happened to me is that people supported it. Like, honestly. And again, that it was like a moment when it was like when I had cancer, and like feeling like I don't know if I can handle doing this anymore. I don't know if I can handle being in the band and it being in the band, and the amount of sacrifices that it takes, not to like feel sorry for ourselves, but that it's really hard work and it's really taxing. And like the idea that that many people would give us that much money because they cared that much about what we were doing and it mattered to anyone at all was honestly the biggest surprise to me of what happened.
And that both times we did Kickstarters, we met our goals very easily. I mean, I don't know if it was easy for all the donors, but what I mean is we were not actually afraid, oh, we're not going to make it to the bar in time. We did every time, both times. Yeah, I was going to say lessons learned. And I think this is basically the same lesson that I try to impart to newer bands too, just about social media use and fan interaction and networking, is try to find a way to be, unapologetically driven toward your real goals and passions in a way that is genuine. And that might sound cheesy, but it translates to people if you are being transparent and accountable and honest and saying what you need and why. And I think when you're asking for money, it's very vulnerable, and depending on our class backgrounds and our various complex issues with asking for things in general, especially money, it can be so loaded and so difficult. But as a creative person, as an artist, a professional, asking for money to do that work, it doesn't usually behoove you to pretend to be something that you aren't, or that it's for something it isn't. Like, usually you can find a way to say the true thing transparently, and what it does is it inspires trust in the people who are willing to invest in you. And that's something that I definitely found. Like, the less pretense, the better. The most luck, the most success I've ever had in networking, in PR work, in fan outreach is when I just say the true thing. Hello, so-and-so. I thought you might like my band. If you don't, that's fine. If you do, we're coming to your city. Let me know if you'd like the details. That is a perfectly acceptable way to build that fan base list we talked about in episode 1. And similarly, saying we are in need of the upfront funds to get to Europe, but once we're there, we've laid out a plan where we can be totally self-sustaining financially, and we're really excited about that. We'd like this opportunity. If you are up for helping us do that, we would be so grateful. That's not like a load of crap, and people can tell. And I think when I see people fundraise or self-promote in ways that feel like really empty hype, it rubs me the wrong way, and I'm a lot less inclined to help them. I know there's also some aesthetic taste and maybe some moral judgment in what I just said that should be critiqued, but that would be my advice. I found that to be more successful.
Yeah, I think that's solid advice that relates to all different areas of the arts and all different platforms you might be using for fundraising or anything else. Yeah.
Which isn't to say be unprofessional and just be like, hey, I just really need $100, but just lay your stuff out transparently and try to find a way to represent yourself professionally, but without a ton of pretense or whatever.
Absolutely. Sean, do you have anything to ask or add to any of this?
I don't like any of your advice. Just kidding. No, I think that's great. I think that's exactly the sort of thing that it can be very hard to be. It can be very hard to feel like you're being genuine when you're trying to be genuine when you're trying to ask for something.
Money. Yeah.
Especially for money. And it's just, and it's like it feels like a minefield sometimes of like, well, I don't want to seem like I'm begging, but I also don't want to seem like I don't need it.
Right.
So so it's just I need your help, but if you want.
Yeah, don't worry
maybe.
about it.
It's cool. We can still be friends if you don't want to help.
Right.
I mean, not really, but really.
I'll be mad and hold a grudge, but...
Yeah, I mean, I totally hold a grudge. That's the way I am.
And it's also the thing that's come up in other conversations we've had with other artists about crowdfunding, which is that people like to back a winning team. So at the same time that you have to have the urgency of the need and being real about that, and also being like, but it's okay if you don't help me, it also has to be like, but we're gonna do it together and it's all gonna be great. So holding these all somewhat contradictory things.
You're
at
gonna
the
be
same
part
time.
of the championship.
Yeah. it's a tricky feat, and yeah,
You're part of the final 5.
Yeah.
Going to be with us. They're
There's-
going to win gold. That was an Olympics reference. Are you that out of it? You didn't get it.
I know that it was
It's
Simone Day, and the Simones all won.
Two Simones
Two
won. They're
Simones.
both amazing.
Yes, I know. I did
Simone
watch.
Biles is a gymnast.
I watched her
She's amazing.
routine on the internet, and I got to see it before. I guess that one got taken down. I've heard that they've been quick about taking down Olympic clips.
Oh, well, we have it on our DVR, all of it. There's,
It was amazing.
individual event finals are starting tomorrow.
Very exciting, and very relevant to our conversation. So on that note, now that the music outside and the various airplanes seem to have passed, let's play a game.
A game. All right.
Let's play a game now
Play
that
an
we're
actual
all
game.
dazed and hot, and I could just fall asleep right now.
Yeah.
And it's too bad because the conversation is very interesting.
We're
but
only an hour and a half over schedule, so.
we'll get out of your hair soon.
I blame.
Yeah, sure. The
I
airplane.
was gonna come up with something funny,
Fresh
but
Direct?
I'm not funny. So, yeah, Fresh Direct. Yeah, they're horrible.
That
something.
took 5 minutes out of.
Yeah.
the game
So
today?
you wanna play a game? So
Yeah, let's
the
play a
game
game.
is, Sean's misheard lyrics.
A fine game that is.
So I have to have part of it up. So God, I can't remember exactly when I assumed that this was what the lyrics were, but it was like decades, and I think I didn't figure out until maybe 2 or 3 years ago that I was wrong, because I finally heard what the name of the song was, and I was like, oh shit, okay. So my misheard lyric is, what a man, rock a party like nobody can.
What?
So
Sean,
Can
that's
you-
embarrassing.
what is the actual
What a mighty good man.
That was my guess as well.
Are you talking about a different song?
different song?
Oh, I had.
That's
we
what
had
I
the
thought.
same-
That's what I
Oh.
first thought you were gonna say,
Yeah.
but
Well,
then when it
started
went
with
on,
What a man, what a
What a
man.
man.
Yeah.
What a mighty good man. But
Yeah.
yeah, Louisa and I both.
That's why I was
got
like,
this
there's
wrong.
No,
way.
it's
okay, will you say it again?
the what I heard was, what a man, rock a party like nobody can.
I can't think of another song that says what a man, what a man.
It
Well,
might
it
not
probably
say,
doesn't.
What a man, what a man.
Oh. Gotcha.
I'm not going to tell you which part of
Is
that is
wrong.
wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I have no idea what song that is.
Eli?
I got nothing.
I mean, I made my guess and it was wrong.
I mean,
So
it sounds great.
It sounds. Like
I'll
a
give
good
you.
song.
I wonder. There's like one person watching right now, but
Because he said his hint was he said when he heard what the title was.
Right, I
He was like,
know.
oh, so that was why I was like, well, then it wouldn't be what a man because that would kind of
That would be the title.
That wouldn't be the wrong part.
so the actual lyric is, and maybe you can guess it from there, is party man, rock a party like nobody can.
Does somebody at
Particle
home
Man?
know? Is
No,
anybody
no, I
on
don't
Facebook
think so.
Live?
No, you said that's the actual lyric.
That's
This is the actual lyric.
There's no party man and particle man.
I know,
that
that's why.
I
Particle Man also couldn't rock a party, I don't think at all.
would tell that to the Johns and see what they have to say.
I mean, I'm not judging.
John F. and John L. know how to party.
I wish they were
Dial a
watching.
song is back.
I know, I saw.
So,
So
I have no clue.
Anybody? I don't think anybody
bad
at
at this
home.
game.
I think
do have other misheard
Christina
lyrics,
just
though.
joined us on Facebook, but
Which Christina? Christina Cordero?
Christina Rea.
Oh, Christina Rea. Hey,
But-
Christina Rea. Do you know
yeah.
Party Man? Rock a party like no one can? I'm guessing it might be
It's a-
called
so-
Party Man, but I don't.
Correct.
the
It
real
is called
lyric.
Party Man by
I won.
Prince from the Batman
Oh my
soundtrack
God,
in 1989.
Oh, I'm an idiot. I should have gotten that.
she's so upset. I don't remember the song.
It's the song when they
Oh, I'm
burst
an
into the
idiot.
museum and
I
they're
know.
spray painting everything. It's the
Can
song
you
that
sing
plays
it?
there. What?
Can you sing it?
Well, that presumes that I can sing, but I can look for it online.
Well, I mean,
It's a great song and a great scene, and I know that I just didn't. It's the heat. It's this cursed heat.
And
I have
since
that
I was a
on-
kid,
at
I
home.
assumed that the lyric was "What a man, but it's Party Man, Party Man. So there you go.
Thank you, Prince.
I was thinking I should rewatch those movies soon.
It's a fine movie.
It's a fine movie. I watch it like once every other year or so.
Really?
Good movie. Yeah.
It is a good movie.
I just am in the mood, especially with
Talking
like
about the
new
Tim Burton
Batman
Batman.
movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Especially with like the new ones, and I'm just like, no, I prefer those ones. Oh, yeah, it used to be on YouTube. Where the hell?
I thought we were gonna have to share misheard lyrics.
No.
Oh no, but you can if you have one.
Do you have one?
I mean, I have many.
Share one. Let's do it. It'll be a 4 Mile Circus first.
Well, the problem is with the first one that always comes to mind for me is that I'm not sure if it was me or you or Claire, our other sister, but it was at least one of us or maybe all of us who thought that in the Bananarama song that it was "I'm your Venus, I'm your fire." Told you, sire.
Yeah.
Like, told you, comma, S-I-R-E, sire, which my favorite thing about that is the idea that the word sire was an everyday vocabulary word in the 80s for us because of whatever fantasy and sci-fi we were reading and watching. And it's like, I feel like I didn't even really understand that word until later.
Buffy.
Yeah, well, like the idea of sire as a verb
Yeah.
and who the sire is because they sired someone, like I didn't really get it, but it was always like, yes, sire, in some
Yes.
fantasy movie.
Some quasi-medieval.
And so it seemed plausible
old-timey.
that it was, I'm your Venus, I'm your fire, told you, sire.
I will
Talking back to the
confirm-
sire.
Yes, I will confirm what Louisa said. I definitely thought that was the lyric.
Yeah.
I
Maybe
definitely
we all
did.
did, and maybe
We
we
all did.
reinforced it by singing it that way.
I don't know who started the sire fire.
Claire. Oh, shit. We didn't start the sire. And on that note,
Speaking of misheard lyrics, no.
did you
let's
find
not-
it?
Yes.
Are you gonna
Well, I
share
found
it?
the scene.
We're all watching Party Man right now
You
from
probably
Batman.
can't hear it.
But you could look it up. You could
There we go.
leave this awesome.
I did.
live
I
stream.
put it in the comments.
Oh.
It's the scene from the movie. Here you go.
And then they all just watched the museum scene from Batman together for the rest of the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good
Boy,
song.
that sound.
I'm so happy now. I feel so much better now that there's Prince playing.
Hold on.
It's kind of a throwaway Prince song, but
Oh yeah, totally. Like
But
most of the
it's
soundtrack,
Prince.
really, honestly.
Red and green.
a throwaway Prince song I take over most songs, but I'm just saying.
Oh, totally.
That's why I don't remember it.
I remember. I'm so embarrassed.
Because I haven't seen the movie in so long.
See,
Yeah.
it's a little like it. Like it's understandable.
He's definitely, he's hanging back on the enunciation enough, or it's like the vocal is in the mix in such a way that you're not really getting a plosive there. You don't know it's a party man.
Exactly.
You're
And
not
I
a
mean,
man.
and the first time I heard it, I was like 6.
Yeah.
So
So you knew about What a Man, but you didn't know about a party man.
This was pre What a Man.
I'm just making
was it pre What a Man?
It was way pre What a Man. What a Man was like 1992, I think.
Oh really? Okay.
Can somebody on Facebook Live confirm? Sean Sotero, are you watching?
At some point, we might need to wrap this up. So we
Yeah.
might want to tone down
Yeah. The requests for new
people who aren't
input
watching to participate.
to tune in.
We could
Yeah.
wait till Sean catches up. I'm sure he's watching saved live stream.
I'm sure. he
So
is. So anyway,
That's great.
how about this?
It's a great life lesson.
So again, for our listeners at home, where can we find you guys online?
www.shondes.com. SHONDES. A difficult Yiddish transliteration. We're so sorry. As we said, we've come a long way in the 10 years since we've been a band. Or facebook.com/theshondes, same spelling. Twitter.com/theshondes, same spelling. SHONDES. It makes me want to say, leave off the extra S for saving. But that's just confusing. Instagram, the Shondes. I don't know what the URL is, but you know how to
It's the
find
same
us.
It's
thing.
just
It's Instagram.
Instagram.com/theshondes.
Glad everybody knows except for me. Anyway, we're there. Spelled the same every time.
And you have an album coming out called Brighton on September 16th on Exotic Fever Records. And you're going to go on the road to support that album in late August. So go to Shondes.com or Facebook.com/theshondes to see if they're coming to a town near you. And then go go buy some merch, make things sustainable, and wear a pretty t-shirt. The t-shirts are very pretty. I have seen them. We're 4 Mile Circus. You can find us at 4MileCircus.com and on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. 4 Mile Circus. That's all one word. The number 4 followed by MileCircus. Louise is making a face at Eli. And that's our show. Join us again soon.
Yeah, when we'll have somebody else doing another
triumphant end note, Nicole. And I guess we're done.
All right, show's over. Bye.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice, and check out other 4 Mile Circus services and projects at 4MileCircus.com, as well as 4 Mile Circus on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Watch our first VOD release, Nicole's award-winning feminist phone sex horror comedy Small Talk, at 4MileCircus.com/store,